Hey there, YouTube. I'm Ikitsu. This is the Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Destra Crusader, which is the heavy cruiser for the Advent faction. And this is actually not only the heavy cruiser for the Advent faction, but this is also their 1000 Pierce siege ship, which unlike the Ogrov, doesn't cost an exotic, so you can actually mass these pretty reasonably. And unlike the Vulkoras Penetrator, doesn't suck, so you can actually use it. So anyway, let's take a look at this thing.
Direct our wrath.
So the Destra Crusader has a durability of 400. It's got 1,550 shield points, 645 armor points, and 1,400 hull points. As far as the heavy cruisers go, it's actually got a really good hit point total here, but its armor points is a little bit lacking compared to the others. 150 antimatter for its ability, and it's got one super heavy plasma that does 16.7 damage per second with 1,000 pierce at its base value. Hidden statistics, you're looking at an also fairly meager 40 armor strength and a maximum speed of 700. All in all, this is actually quite a tough ship to kill. It's just not going to get away with as much armor stuff as the other two. Still, overall, pretty hard to get rid of. The super heavy plasma also has a lower damage per second than the other two, but thanks to its really high pierce, it's actually quite good at dealing with a large number of targets that those other guys are not, like the Titans, command ships, the star bases, the capitals. All of those, this thing absolutely shreds through in a way that the Harka or the Kotova Suppressor cannot, because this thing's competing against the Ogrov and the Vulkoras Penetrator, which, again, the Destra Crusader is much easier to use in large numbers and also arguably just better than them. Is tier 4, just like the other of the 1000 Piercers, but is higher tier than the other heavy cruisers. I currently really like the Destra Crusader. I think that's a really powerful ship here. And part of that comes down to its next ability. This is Ruthlessness. This is the active ability that you can research at Tech Tier 5. It comes in very, very late, unfortunately. This is an ability that has a cooldown of 90 seconds, antimatter cost of 90, so you can basically always have this cast as soon as you got it. It has splash damage. Add splash damage to your attack there. That deals 15% of the damage that you deal, increasing based on your psi power. Now, you can't add items to the ship, so you might think that you can't get much psi power on these guys. For Advent Reborn, you can get this up to 200 psi power without too much difficulty by that point in time, by that point in the tech tree. That's going to get you 75% additional damage. For Advent Wrath, you're looking at a little bit below that, but I think that you're still hitting about 68% in total splash damage. So you can actually deal a lot of damage to side targets using Ruthlessness. It has a pierce value of 300 on the splash, radius of 500, and the duration is 45 seconds. So Ruthlessness takes this ship that is a very dedicated capital ship killer and makes it a really, really effective anti-cruiser ship as well. It's very, very good in terms of being able to beat up at a blob of Harkas, a blob of Kotova Suppressors, and it also lets it sort of match up against things like the Javelis, which normally would counter the Destra because they're high pierce, or against things like, say, the Exoria, or against things like the Kandak Assailant or other frigates. It becomes something that's a little bit more versatile in that late game. You're never going to be good against corvettes because the radius on Ruthlessness is too small and it's too hard for this thing to track those kinds of targets, but the Destra Crusader is remarkably good into a huge number of ships in the game. There are some ships that can kill it, but this thing can also kill them, so it's a very, very scary ship to be up against there. I think that this is probably the scariest and the strongest out of the three heavy cruisers, certainly, and I think it's also the strongest and best out of the three the 1000 Pierce ships. So this is a really, really powerful ship. The interesting thing is I don't actually know how you would nerf this necessarily other than maybe increasing its cost a little bit, because as it currently stands, if you decrease its damage too much, people are just going to stop building them and they're just going to build Radiances instead, because you can actually get a Radiance that deals kind of comparable damage to these guys as they currently are, because you can get really scary items on the Radiance. And if you're doing the damage cheaper with the capital ship, then that's more accessible than these guys, because you can get capital ships at economy tier 3 where you can start building exotics, and as a result this is actually harder to get than a capital ship in a lot of ways there. So let's take a look at the hostility research that we got going on here. So as I said, this thing's got a unique tech at late tier 5. Prior to that, it is pretty weak against massed ships, and especially against things like the Javelis, against things like the Caleb. Other ships that can sort of deal a lot of pierce damage to it can actually kill these guys quite quickly. It's always pretty weak against things like Strikecraft as well. The bombers can kill it pretty quickly. So unless you've got the AoE to let them clear out the enemy ships, the enemy carriers, the enemy missile ships very, very quickly in return, these guys do lose in those fights early on. Once you get access to this, it becomes a little bit more 50-50. For energy, probably going to want the attack damage boosts first, but you're also, of course, going to want the shield bonuses. I just think that prioritize the attack. Going in order, though, the shield bonuses are quite nice. These guys are probably going to get focused down, but they are tough enough that a lot of situations you are going to be able to get that shield burst going off on them, especially if you're also getting hit by a lot of AoEs or something like that. These guys are tough enough against a lot of things that the shield burst is probably not going to be as prevalent, because you do have to sort of kill them by concentrating fire on them. But this can still come in handy in a lot of situations there. There's a lot of things Advent can do to make that sort of be relevant if they want to, and when you're dealing with the Destra Crusader, you probably do want that. For Plasma, you are doing the standard thing for Advent, where you sort of cap out at 36% there, including these things, which is not great. It's lower than their competitors in a lot of ways, but this is actually better than the damage for most of the ships out there that deal 1,000 pierce damage. This is actually really, really good in that case. What's more is they've also got this rapid plasma generation upgrade that gives them 15% weapon reload, which is multiplicative to these other bonuses. This makes it so that this is closer to the level of scaling that Vasari get on their ships, making it so that the Destra Crusader is actually really, really, really high damage for their upgrades. And their base damage is also quite good, so that definitely helps them out there. For Substance, the hull modifications there to increase it by 30%, that's pretty good. These guys do have quite a lot of hull points. This is one of the only ships in the game where you're really going to get a lot of value out of the energized plating, because you're going to be building these guys into that Tech 5 probably most games there, and they've actually got armor. The other ships that I think are viable into that super late game are things like the Domina, the Iconis Guardian, and the Arya Drone Host, and none of them have armor. So obviously this is going to be the only one that actually gives a crap about that kind of thing in the super late game. So yeah, like, you're probably going to want to focus on that sort of offense there. These guys are not like a short range ship. They can actually fling out their plasma from quite a long way. Their main goal is to really target and kill enemy capital ships or high priority targets of other sorts. And being able to just do that damage extra fast does help, but after that, durability does help a little bit there. For Harmony Research, you've got access to Protection and Unity for the Advent Reborn, which is kind of nice for these guys. They're tough enough that they're going to be able to survive long enough for that to kick in, although they're probably going to get focus fired down in a lot of situations, so they're not going to survive too much more thanks to that. Advent Wrath has got an additional 30 psi power located in their culture, and that's going to help them deal extra area of effect damage, so that's quite strong there. The strongest one, however, of course, is the Fury of the Unity at Tier 5 for Advent Wrath, which is going to give these guys that extra 20% damage, which is making it so that their scaling is kind of like unparalleled. There's really no other ship in the game that's getting a 56% bonus to damage just out of the tech tree, plus an attack speed bonus on top of that, making it so that it's even higher than that. Absolutely nutty damage once you've got this fully upgraded for Advent Wrath. Speaking of, we'll go through the Advent Wrath Unity abilities first there. Avatar can give you that extra 30% on these guys, which might sound like the most important thing, but I actually think that Chastise is the most important for these guys. Avatar giving you that extra 30% to damage pushes you up to like 86% plus the attack speed bonus. This is probably the strongest sub-capital ship in the game at that point. However, it's already kind of really, really strong without that. The reason I think that Chastise is important for these guys and is really good with them, and you may even go with both, is that after you've taken a couple volleys against an enemy capital ship, there's a pretty decent chance they're going to try and get away. Because this thing is capable of killing capitals really, really, really fast. And if they don't pull them away really, really quickly, then this thing can finish them off really effectively. The end result of that is you kind of want to be using the Destra Crusader in a situation where it can easily run down the ship that's trying to get away, and using Chastise can really help with that. So I think that's a little bit more important than the extra damage, because if the enemy's got, like, say, an Antarak Marauder, they're capable of, like, speeding out of there, then that's going to leave you sort of high and dry with the Destra Crusader. But if they don't have anything that's fast enough, then yeah, Avatar would definitely be the better choice there. For the other ability, you've got the massive AoE. That actually synergizes quite well with ruthlessness. So if you do find yourself in a situation there where you're in a situation where your Destras are in a pretty big struggle against something like a bunch of Javelises, where the Javelises are killing you really quickly, but you're killing them really quickly as well. There's going to be a bunch of Javelises that are on sort of low percent health because of ruthlessness. And as a result, you can use these guys with that Fury ability to make it so that they just get finished off, or they get finished off by the ruthlessness stacks. So I think that all of Advent Wrath works really, really well with the Destra. However, I do think they're also pretty good with Advent Reborn. Cleanse is a great thing for these guys just because they're such an expensive, good target. And actually, I should probably talk about their cost in a little bit here. But keeping them alive is really, really good. They're a ship that you don't want to be losing too many of too quickly. And they're also a relatively decent target to hit Cleanse on. But in this case, I would prefer they were near a Vigilus, and I hit Cleanse on the Vigilus to repair all the Destra Crusaders. I think that would be the better option between the two. Recall can be good for these guys. They're a little bit slower than a lot of the other ships I've talked about, so just doing this as a repositioning tool can be important in a lot of situations. The only thing that these guys struggle against completely is Corvettes, like I said. They're also bad against bombers, but they can kill the carriers. Sacrifice is something that can wipe out a lot of those Corvettes. So if you're being countered by a tech player who's gone for a whole bunch of Stylats, because Stylats are pretty good into this, they're actually really, really good into this, but it's a weird thing to be building this late into the game. But you can use Sacrifice, and all of your Destra Crusaders will be completely fine under most levels of Sacrifice, and all those Corvettes will just explode. So you can do that, get rid of all of them, and have all of your Destra Crusaders be completely fine. The obvious one, though, is, of course, Resurrection. If you're using this as your frontline ship, you're just building a lot of them. Being able to bring back, with just the level 2 version of this, 30 extra Destra Crusaders back is a huge amount of value. So let's talk a little bit about cost. I forgot to mention that the Destra Crusader is surprisingly cheap. It has a 15 supply cost. It costs 550 credits, 200 metal, and 235 crystal. This is basically the same as like a Harka, but with an extra like 200 crystal tacked onto the price tag. But for how easy that crystal is for the Advent, like the hard part is actually still the credits and the metal, honestly. This is not expensive for what you're getting. The supply cost is excellent. This is a very, very good ship in terms of its economic sort of value there. I think it's probably one of the most cost-efficient ships sort of in the game right now, in a lot of ways. But yeah, like, that's pretty much everything there is to say about the Destra Crusader. It's a fantastic ship. It works into most things. It's way better than the Exoria into almost every target that I can think of. It's got a few ships that can counter it, but it can sort of get into the situation where it can counter some of those counters thanks to its area of effect attack. Like, you can just mass a lot of these and you'll be okay into a lot of situations there. And I do think that, like, this is the ship that if you're going to get a bunch of Vigilises, it really covers over the few weaknesses that the Destra Crusader has, because suddenly those Javelises aren't so scary, the Counterattack Assailants aren't so scary, and the Stylats aren't so scary. If you're getting swarmed by a whole bunch of Corvettes, the Vigilises are actually really good into that, and you can just use the Destra Crusaders to kill all the capital ships. So I think that this is a really, really powerful ship right now. I really think that it's kind of hard to nerf, too, because if you did nerf it, what would happen is this thing would end up just being less cost efficient than the Radiance, and you can just build Radiances to do the same role as the Destra Crusader. Like, you can already do that. Right now, the Destra is better into certain types of targets, but if you make it like its damage too low or make it too cost inefficient, that changes. That math sort of changes to the point where it would be better to just get the Radiance, because the Radiance can have things like the Vex Amplifier or the Plasma Agitator, and you can't get that on the Destra Crusader. So you end up in a situation where, while this is better, its numbers are really, really good just out of the gate there. That's only true if it remains efficient. Changing those numbers too much, it risks just ending up in the dumpster. It's also very, very difficult to get access to, so I think that should also be considered. The real thing that I think that this sort of shows me is that the Ogrov and the Vulkoras Penetrator probably need some slight tweaks to make them a little bit better. The Ogrov is actually really scary. It's just you can't build them to do anything other than their specific role, because they're very hard to sort of get access to. I think that making them like super durable, like putting them halfway between a regular ship and a capital ship in terms of their durability, like 6,000 hit points or something like that, might make the Ogrov viable or better, just because like then you can't sort of send something to quickly assassinate it. It requires a real concerted effort to get rid of it. And I don't know what you do with the Vulkoras Penetrator. Honestly, they're not great. But any event though, that's the Destra Crusader. I really like it. I think it's a great part of the Advent fleet right now. But in any event, yeah, that's everything I've got to say about it for today. Hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.